And welcome to season 2 of the Happy Sensory Corner podcast. At Mendability, we want to help everyone, especially when they're vulnerable, to feel happier, more comfortable in their own skin, more confident, proud of themselves, so that they can be their true selves. And so our contribution is to work on brain health. As our brains grow stronger, faster, healthier, more resilient, all of us would benefit from a brain like that, but we're thinking especially of those among us who struggle. And so we developed a gentle, family-centered program of whole brain games that boosts brain development, activates the brain's self-healing mechanisms, all of that really cool stuff. It's based on a neuroscience field of environmental enrichment, and we call it sensory enrichment because there's a really strong emphasis in what we do in having sensory and motor experiences. There's a little smattering of cognitive and social and all that good stuff, but it's really a hands-on program. So while we're experts in brain development, we know that there's so much more that parents have to navigate. And one of the biggest challenges that many parents face is managing their own stress while they're trying to foster a deeper connection with their children, especially as they grow into adolescence. It can be overwhelming. To see behaviors change, to feel unsure about how to respond, and to just that general sense of inadequacy. And so I'm really excited to discuss this today with Jeanine Mouchawar. And I forgot to ask you how you say your name.
You
So let's
said
try
it
this again.
beautifully.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's rare.
Jan-
But you nailed it.
Oh, wow, cool. Jeanine and I, for those of you listening, spoke almost 3 months ago, I want to say. And so we're connecting again, finally recording this episode. So Jeanine Mouchawar is a certified life coach, Stanford University graduate, specializes in, I'm going to say, guiding parents of teenagers through the challenges of adolescence. Is this how you'd sort of...
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds great.
You focus on, I was going to say, replacing outdated conflict-driven parenting techniques. It feels like we're bashing on some parenting techniques, but it's true. I mean, a lot of the natural instinct in some parents, and I know I was a victim of this, is looked a lot like a power struggle. You know, if I could distance
Mhm.
myself from the situation, is like, why was I
Mhm.
so insistent?
Yeah.
And I can't wait to have you tell us what how we can do this better. So let me go back to my introduction, my bio for you. I wrote this
Okay.
as a parent of 3 children, including a son diagnosed with ADHD and a learning disability. Jeanine brings both professional expertise and personal insight to her work. She has coached numerous families, helping them transform their relationships and create calmer, more positive households. This is not what we all dream about, right? A calm,
That's
positive household, right? The dream home.
dream
Jeanine
home.
also Jeanine also works with Next Level Autism, further demonstrating her ability to support families. And I'm thinking about our audience because a lot of our people listening have a child either on the autism spectrum, or they're a service provider, or they're a special educator. And
Hmm.
so I know they'll be particularly interested in applying your natural and beautiful parenting um, principles to that situation. So where I'd like to start. So thank you for being on a podcast, Jeanine.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kim.
I'd like to start with the why, and I like asking if something happened to little Jeanine that maybe planted the seed or sort of rewired your brain in such a way as to make you particularly attuned to the principles you want to teach today.
Yeah. I love that question. I basically ended up doing what I'm doing because of a past experience. I mean, I have three kids of my own. They're now young adults, but my middle child, my son, was diagnosed with ADHD, in second grade and a learning disability in fourth grade. And just from birth, he was just challenging to parent, very different than my firstborn. And I kind of muddled along as best I could and constantly looking for resources to support him and his needs and reading books and listening to podcasts, all those sorts of things. And I felt like as I would check in on his self-confidence and how he was doing socially and academically, I felt like, okay, we were kind of muddling along. But when the high school years hit, I felt very unprepared for how to help him. And when you touched on earlier, kind of the traditional approach to parenting, I just found that that did not work with him. So when I say traditional approach, for most of us, what I'm talking about is just how we were raised, like the classic rules, rewards, punishment structure that oftentimes reverted into, like you mentioned, Kim, a power struggle. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what I was experiencing were battles and friction and a power struggle. And as that was occurring, I felt my son pulling further and further away from me. And, it was kind of this vicious cycle of I was trying to control what was going on and help him make good choices. And as I was doing that, he was getting more and more resistant. And so eventually his first day senior year in high school, he'd been hanging out with a group of kids who were smoking pot in 11th grade. And first day senior year, he shows up high and we end up getting asked to leave the school right in the middle of Common Apps and trying to get to college and finding a college that's a good fit with a support system for his vulnerabilities. And it really just rocked our world, both my son and myself. And it was this awakening of, what I am doing is not working and things are just getting worse and worse. And I need to go learn a different way to communicate with him because I wanted to be his go-to person and I wanted that closeness and connection. And I wanted to feel like I had tools and strategies to speak to him to really help him. And the way I was speaking to him, I thought we were having conversations, but they were more like lectures. And it wasn't working. And so that's really was the point where I thought I've got to go look for different types of parenting approaches that really resonate with who I am and the parent I wanted to be. And that's when we actually found a program that he and I went to together where he worked on his mindfulness and emotion regulation and interpersonal communication skills. And I worked on my parenting skills and we learned a new way to communicate with one another. And I was able to help himself really turn things around and re-engage in school and stop smoking pot and come back into the folds of the family. And I just was like, wow, I know I am not the only one out there struggling with issues like this. And I really just want to share this information with as many people as possible. So that's when I went and got my life coaching certification. And I've just continued to to do a deeper dive on conscious parenting. And I was introduced to dialectical behavioral therapy in the program and cognitive behavioral therapy and just observing like what was working and what wasn't working and just continuing to build on that. And after coaching parents, moms, dads of preteens, teens, young adults now for about, I think it's been about 8 years. I've have a really clear idea of a different approach that works than that traditional approach we talked about of rules, rewards, punishments. Really, I think where most of us end up doing is focusing on fixing or stopping our child's behavior that's worrying us. Right. So in my example with my son, I was really concerned and worried about him smoking pot. But even with my other two children, my older one was like a straight A student, but was overwhelmed and anxious and put all this pressure on herself. And what I was saying to her wasn't really helping her move through those big feelings. She just was kind of continued to be stuck in them. Or my younger son, who was totally into video gaming and a COVID kid. Like, I remember thinking, you're so lazy, and trying to make him stop video gaming or motivating him to study. And like, I felt like I wasn't as an effective parent as I wanted to be. But when I took these strategies that I learned with my middle child and applied them to the other two, it like took our relationship from good to great. So that's when I realized, you know what? These communication strategies work for all kids who have, whatever the challenge is between you and your child and whatever their challenges are. These are strategies that really can meet their needs and foster that connection and closeness I think we all want with our kids.
So I grabbed my pencil and I was taking notes because you said some interesting words, and I wonder if I could ask you some follow-up questions. You talked about structure. And structure is a word that's often used in parenting children with autism in particular. We'll often hear, oh, my kid, he needs structure. He prefers structure. He doesn't like it when I disrupt the routine and the structure. But the way you're talking about structure almost made it sound like structure was an obstacle between you and your child. Can you explain, or what am I missing?
Hmm. So when I hear what you're saying, what comes to my mind is, and tell me if I didn't understand you properly, but you're talking about a routine, that they need
Hmm.
structure in their day in terms of a routine so they know what to expect.
Hmm.
And, as they build those skills of building habits and a routine, it's easier to be successful in the world. And I 100% agree with that. I mean, I raised my kids definitely with routine and structure. What I'm talking about is is a different way to speak to them and interact with them and engage with them. Right. So if we are laying down, when I say like rules, rewards, and punishments, it's it's that typically what happens in the teenage years is that approach ends up leaving our children, our teenagers feeling like they have no control and no say in their life. And when they have no control and no say, they feel like they have no agency, that's when we get the resistance and the pushback. And so what I am offering is like, we just need to slow down here and have more conversations with them when we see them struggling with certain behavior. So it's not that I wanted to take away the structure or the routine of my son's day, but it was realizing that, really trying to separate who my son was from the behavior that I was seeing that I thought he was struggling with. And so
Mm.
having conversations around what's keeping you stuck, like, or what's causing you, what are you thinking, what are you feeling that's causing you to hang out with these friends who are not nice to you and not kind to you, and you're doing like high risk behaviors. right? What's causing you to gravitate to them and to slow the conversation down and to start understanding like the root cause of what's driving the behavior you're seeing that might be concerning you versus just quote, like my dad would say, like laying down the law, laying down the law. This is the way it is. This is what you have to do. And it was like, I think that sort of approach tends to leave, especially teenagers, feeling like if you break those rules, your parents are disappointed in you, and now you feel ashamed. And all of a sudden, you start internalizing, like, I'm a bad kid, versus slowing down as a parent, really understanding what's driving their behavior. What are they thinking about? What are they feeling that's driving that behavior? And talking to them about that.
Switching the conflict from trying to address a behavior to addressing a need.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you think about it, and I know both of you have adult children too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, if you think about, because I'm sure I parented just the way most people do until my middle one was 17, right? But we were so focused, all the conversations were very focused on the behavior that you didn't like.
Mm.
Right. So it's like, you need to study more. Why didn't you study for your final? Why are you missing assignments? Why are you disrespectful to me? Right. I mean, I could go on and on. Stop smoking pot, start being nice to your sibling. And what I'm offering is that when we do that, I mean, think about it for a minute. 99% of the time, that results in what you mentioned in the beginning, right? That power struggle, conflict, a battle. And it rarely changes the behavior the way we want to change it. And so I think that the aha here is, let's stop having conversations about the surface level behavior and let's try to slow down and understand what's causing them to make that choice. What are they thinking about themselves? How are they feeling? Right? Because if you think about it, like here's a tangible example. We'll take my son for example. When I got to when I got to really the root cause of the problem with the smoking, it was that he felt like he couldn't fit in with anybody else. He felt he was looking for a group where he felt like he could be accepted and fit in. And so then all of a sudden we're having a very different conversation. We're not having a conversation about how often you're smoking pot, where you're getting smoked pot from, where'd you get the money from, who bought that for you, right? Like we're not
Did you
having that
find,
conversation
yeah, I mean,
anymore.
my dad mind just went into all of a sudden I don't care that he's smoking pot and maybe I'm going to go and smoke pot with him so that he feels like he belongs with me. I'm having all sorts of strange thoughts, but you're totally right. They're totally different because I think the empathy and all, instead of a conflict conversation, it's a oh my goodness, how can I help you conversation instead of
Yeah,
you're so annoying.
right, right.
And I think this applies to every the principle is the same when you have a child with who is non-speaking, maybe having a lot of meltdowns. All right. You in a neurotypical context, you have got kids that should be doing this, but instead they're making the bad decisions or decisions you don't like, and then you find
Mm,
out later on that they were trying to address a need and you love the need. When you look at a kid with who's not who's it's a whole different world, it looks like, but the way to help them is to help them feel happy. It's not to help them know how to say cookie if they want a cookie. It's not to help them stop having a meltdown so that mommy can have a nice time in the mall, or so that everybody else in a restaurant can have their own time without being disrupted. It's how can I help you be happy in the restaurant? How can I help you be happy in the mall? How can I help you happy right now? What is the need? Why are you having this meltdown? That's the same approach, it feels to me like.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that for a second. You worked with Next Level Autism. Did you have those types of conversations transferring into helping children with developmental delays, some kind of neurological condition, be happy and how to address
Yeah.
their need?
So, Next Level Autism is a group coaching program that a colleague of mine runs. And it actually starts with you go through I can't think of the name of what she calls it, but there's a like an entryway program until your kids are speaking and potty trained and all, and all of that stuff. I don't know all
Mm.
the details. But then she opened up the second program called Next Level Autism. And it was to support parents with autistic kids who now were able, more high functioning and who are also preteens, teens, young adults. And so what we found when I was discussing this with my colleague is that really a lot of the same principles that I was coaching my clients on, and I'd say about half my clients have kids with ADD or OCD or some sort of neurodivergent
A thing with
issue.
a D at the end.
Yes. Um, I do have a client who I coach that had or has an autistic child as well. But the same principles were working in for all the kids in in similar
Hmm.
situations. So I basically, I teach the same communication approach to the parents in the Next Level Autism group that I do when I work with my one-on-one coaching clients.
And yeah, what you're saying is it's why we like to bring people from the what I'm going to call the neurotypical world into our world because well, a couple of reasons. One, we with our program, the idea is to get the brain to increase its development, recover, compensate, and the symptoms start to fade away. Their skill sets start to expand, and they can do more and more, and their this disorder becomes less and less. And so, the outlook is to be part of that world where you can go to the restaurant and worry that your kid is smoking pot.
Hmm.
Because right now, I bet our parents are like, I don't care. I want him to be able to speak. And so you want that to be your biggest problem one day. And
Mm.
so it's great. And so we want to point them in that direction. We want to bring people and say, listen to those people,
Mhm.
because these are the people that you want to listen to for future. But more and more, as we listen to those specialists, we realize that the same principles apply. And often, when somebody says, no, the situation is different, you need to treat them differently because you need to do things differently because it comes from a their less than approach that I find less and less relevant the more we talk to people like you,
Mhm.
where to me it feels like a child is a child is a child and they're not happy or they're happy.
Mhm.
And if they're not happy, you want them to be happy. And that's really all it boils down to. You can be
Mhm.
happy with or without an arm. You can be happy with or without all sorts of things, including some bits of your brain. And
Mhm.
so I'm not sure where I was going with this. I wanted, yes,
Yeah.
I was saying how relevant what you're saying. It almost
Yeah.
sounds irrelevant when you talk about things like smoking pot, because, like I said, I wish this was my biggest problem, but it also
Yes.
sounds very relevant because it feels right. Oh, yes, if I focused more on his needs, if I focused more on why is he behaving like this, what is it that he's trying to
Mhm.
communicate, what is
Mhm.
the pain that is causing this behavior, the more you can satisfy that need, then the less that behavior will happen with or
Mhm.
without a neurological condition. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I mean, listening to you is reminding me of some of the past conversations we've had in this group of moms who have, children, autistic children. And it's like I was thinking one of the moms had the issue where, her son was angry all the time and exploding and we talked about, well, let's get at the root cause. Like, what's causing that anger? What's going on? What's he thinking? What's he feeling? And, and that sort of pivoted into, I remember one of the times another mom, like, her child came home and had quit some sort of club or sport, like out of nowhere. And she's thinking, what happened? Like they loved that, right? And so initially, like she wanted to have a conversation around, why did you quit that? That makes no sense. You love that sport. And right. And so what we talked about and coached on is, well, wait, let's slow down a minute and just say, hey, I hear that you quit your I think it was maybe as a baseball team or something. Like what's going on there? What caused that to happen? And what we uncovered is this her son had misinterpreted things that the coach had said and took what the coach said like he's a highly sensitive and emotional child. And so he took it all very personally and internally. And instead of, he didn't have the skills at the time to figure out how to navigate this feeling of rejection. So he just quit the team and he was angry at the coach. And, what his mom saw on the surface was all this anger. But as like, we kind of dug deeper and I kind of guided her in, okay, let's have a different conversation here. Like she came back to the next call was like, oh my God, and then we found out all this stuff that was going on underneath things, underneath the actual behavior and action that he had taken. Does that
Dude,
resonate?
yes. And do you have what what happened? Did he go back to the team? Did he go to a different team? What was the outcome? Do you
Yeah.
remember?
Yes, yes. So part of what we did when she figured out what actually was going on is, I encouraged her to try to help him. Like I always say, like the third pillar, we talked about this is to help your child help
No,
themselves.
you and I talked about this offline before,
Oh,
but we have yet to go
okay.
into the three-step process, and maybe now would
Okay.
be a good
Well,
time.
well, I'll finish this thought and then we can
Yes.
circle back to that. But it was like, I said, let's help him solve this for himself. So like, let's ask him some questions. I want you, the mom, to ask him some questions to help him think about, what's going on. Like, well, and I can't remember her son's name, but asking him like, so what might else the coach have been thinking when he said that? What might be some other possibilities of his intentions behind that? Right. And just starting to get a different conversation going with her son.
Hmm.
And, you know, as she was talking about this, more things came out about his teammates. And so, yeah, it ended up where as we dove into it and really asked him more and more questions, he did end up going back to the softball team, re-engaging in it. He felt so proud of himself because his mom helped him come up with conversation pieces that he could go talk to the coach about and helped him figure out a way to communicate what his concerns and worries were and to really listen to what the coach had to say. And they were able to talk through all this other stuff that was concerning the child that really had nothing to do with, I hate baseball now.
Hmm.
So he
I
did
love
end up
it. I love when you how you
re-engaging.
said that he was proud of himself.
Hmm.
I can see the power of this positive interaction where, this kid's talking to a superior, right? And but he feels equipped and confident to address a situation with
Hmm.
mom having trained, coached, encouraged, loved, all of that good stuff. And it just
Yeah.
just just imagine this as a fantastic seedbed for future relationships, for future situations, future conflicts. I remember my mom
Yeah.
said this and I went and did this and I can do this, you know? And
I
this is
yeah.
very much what we're trying to achieve with our program is equip
Mhm.
parents with the knowledge and the principles and the protocols and the activities so that they can build up the kids' abilities and become proud of themselves. We got stories after stories of
Yeah.
kids who, proud of their handwriting, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Handwriting is a
Oh,
very big deal, and
yeah.
a lot of the parents are upset and embarrassed sometimes. Um, and the kids can't really hold their pens because their fine motor grip isn't great. And it sounds silly to focus on that when there seems to be much bigger issues at hand. But this
Mm-hmm.
giving somebody a reason to be proud of themselves, I think is I can't think of anything
Yeah.
more important right now, but that's probably because I'm
Yeah.
hot into this topic.
No, but I think to your point, right? It's sometimes we need to realize and recognize that it's these small steps of solving problems in little areas, whether it's communicating to your baseball coach or learning how to handwrite, that helps your child build self-trust. And it's that self-trust that builds the confidence. And when they start getting it in one area, they can then apply it in lots of areas.
Mm,
And my
yes.
other thought when you were talking too is like this is also is really aligned with your handwriting example. And that's, we were never trained or taught as parents to like look at what our kids are struggling with, that they're just missing a skill. Like we aren't all naturally born with the skills of learning how to handwrite or the skill of how to talk to, a coach or a teacher, or the skill of how to navigate our big emotions, or the skill of how to tolerate our frustration. Like some kids intuitively have it. And listen, you got a kid who's got like high skills, just naturally amazing. Like, lucky you, you're a lucky kid. But for the rest of us, it just doesn't always happen. And so I really like to help my parents and, my clients look at these behaviors when they see behaviors that their child's doing that's concerning them. It's like asking yourself, well, what's the skill that they're missing? And how can we help them build that skill?
And I think this
Versus
is
what
where your
I heard.
three-step framework comes in,
Sure, sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, I think where most of us go to is kind of unconsciously labeling our kids, like you're lazy, you're not athletic enough, you're not this, you're not that. And that versus seeing them as, no, they're very competent. They are a good kid, just struggling, because they're missing a skill right now. But to answer your question, I do have like a three-step
Yeah.
framework that instead of like focusing on fixing or stopping the behavior and having all your conversations about that, is instead to focus on, if we zoom out for a minute, it's like the theme of connecting before correcting a behavior. And when you've got a preteen or a teen or a young adult, it's so important to slow down and solidify that connection with them before you have any sort of conversation about the behavior that's worrying you. Because if you
Can
don't,
we can we use one or two specific examples of a challenging situation? Maybe draw from your experience, or if you want, I can
yeah, yeah,
provide a couple of case studies and you say, okay, here's how I would apply the principle.
yeah,
Do you have a
yeah,
couple of
no,
examples in
absolutely.
mind?
We can go either way. I mean, I've got a ton of client examples, or if you
Go
want to
with your
bring,
examples because then we
okay.
can have, what happened as a result, as an outcome.
Sure, sure. Okay, so I was coaching a client this week. She has a ninth grade son.
Hmm.
And she was noticing that he wasn't, here we are, the beginning of a new semester, and he really was dragging his feet and he wasn't motivated to get his work done and his assignments done. And this is like a good kid who's a good student. Um, he really was having a hard time, like putting his cell phone down and having a hard time not video gaming with his friends. Um, And I think where her mind naturally went was what we were talking about earlier is like, oh, I got to discipline him. I got to stop that, right? I got to stop him being on his cell phone and stop him from video gaming. And, I have to fix the situation by making sure he comes right home from school and starts studying. Right? I think naturally, like that's where we go, but that doesn't work because it shuts down the conversation with our kids, right? That's why they literally say to us, like, you don't understand, or go away, or leave me alone, or you don't get it, right? We just get these phrases because when we approach them with our like solutions, they feel like we're trying to control them and like their actions are disappointing us. And that feels awful to them. And so they withdraw and they push back. And so the
I
first
want,
place we,
sorry,
oh,
I want to I want to interrupt you here because I want to raise another thought, and it's the thought of this non-speaking child or an adult who's doing this repetitive behavior, and it's potentially destructive. I'm thinking about this one kid, for example, who loved to spin anything that was long. So it could be a towel, it could be things, but if he couldn't get what he wanted, he might grab an extension cord, right? And it would start spinning it and spinning it and spinning it.
mm,
And then and you have other situations, but then those kids are told don't. And I'm wondering if it's the same place that it's coming from, that don't play the video game, don't
mhm.
spin, don't do this potentially dangerous thing, then you're going to break something, you're going to
Mm,
hurt me, you're going to hurt yourself. Don't.
yeah.
And the kids like the one I'm talking about get this no so often. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we spend enough time thinking, what does it feel to them to be told
Mm,
no so
mhm.
often?
Yeah.
You think that they're cognitively disabled? You think that they're impaired? I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think they feel just the same.
Well, I
And
think
so
what
I'd
you're
love
hitting
to apply
on,
your
Kim.
method to that same
Yeah.
situation as well.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is that the parent experience, whether the kid's video gaming and not doing his homework, or the kid's doing a repetitive behavior that is concerning, the parent experience is the same, right? We see what the kids are doing and we're worried. Maybe we're a little frustrated because we've told them not to do that over and over again. So we'll get frustrated or annoyed because they're not listening. I think we all want like our kids to be the best version of themselves. And when we see that they're not, right, our nervous system gets activated
Mm,
with fear or anger or frustration or worry or any of those sorts of things. And if we don't have any resources or tools or strategies on how to navigate that without just saying no or stop it, right? Then the power struggle that you referred to in the beginning and the conflict is like inevitable. And so to tie that back to the three pillars, right? My three pillars are you got to get them talking, you got to show that you understand, and then you got to help them help themselves. And in the first pillar of getting them talking, it starts with us. It starts with us, like slowing down and calming our nervous system, our reactivity, emotional reactivity to what the behavior that our child's doing, right? We want to take the time to quiet our fears and our worries. And so I teach my clients a four-step framework to do that, which involves like, first you got to be aware that your nervous system's flooded, right? So you got to notice like, am I angry? Am I worried? Am I sweating? Are my shoulders up in my ears? Is my stomach churning, right? Like, got to first just become aware that you are emotionally triggered. And then you want to have in your back pocket some coping skills for yourself of how do I get more calm, more grounded? How do I get more in a leadership position and role in this dynamic between me and my child? Right. And it starts with like resisting the urge to yell no right then and there. Right. And just taking a moment and grounding yourself. That's that second pillar. Like have some coping strategies in your back pocket. Like you always have your breath available to you, right? Just stop for a minute and take a few deep breaths, anything to kind of settle your nervous system. And then the third and fourth pillar that we work on, the third pillar is your thoughts. Like, what
We
is
didn't do the second pillar.
the second pillar is coping strategy. So
Oh, right.
awareness, right? First, we have to be aware that our nervous system's jacked up.
Yes, yes,
Then
yes,
we
yes.
need to like have, and this, I work on this with clients, but let's have like a whole host of coping strategies for you in the moment and outside of the moment to get calm and grounded in that leadership role that we want to be in as a parent. And then, let's take a look at our thoughts. Like, is there some sort of mantra we can come up with in the moment? Like, okay, my child just hasn't learned this skill yet. Just some sort of mantra that like opens up the possibility that things can be different, things can change, and a way to just slow ourselves down. And the fourth pillar is like your emotions, learning how to navigate your big emotions in a way that we're not suppressing them. We're letting them move through us again, so we can get into that calm, grounded leadership position. And so circling back to the global three pillars that I teach, right?
Yes.
This first one about getting them talking is we need to
You need to do
settle
those four
our
big
big
things for
feelings,
you so you can get them talking. I love it.
or at
It's
least
funny
one
how
of the four
get them
things.
talking is actually about getting you. What if you
Yes,
change it to get you
yes,
listening or something?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But if you market it that way, parents are like, what are you talking about? I listen.
Get them
I'm a
talking because
really
that's
good
what they want.
listener.
That's right. That's right. That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So you're
that
in this
first pillar.
space
Hmm.
where, okay, you've taken a breath, you realize nobody's in mortal danger. You need to sit down. You cannot solve this by being activated.
Hmm.
So you've calmed yourself down. All right, what's
Yeah.
the next step after that? Because you haven't gotten them talking yet.
We haven't gotten them talking, right? So
Yeah.
how do we get them talking, right? So first, we get in our calm, grounded leadership position. We resist that urge to, talk to them right away and yell no or stop it. And then now that we've like taken a moment for ourselves, we want to focus on having a conversation and not a lecture. So here's an example. Let's say you're going for a hike with a friend and you're really worried. We'll use your example, right? You're really worried and concerned because your kid is doing this repetitive cord spinning thing and you're worried about their safety. You're worried about, whatever, all the different things. You're frustrated because they're not listening to you and they're not stopping, and you're worried because you don't see them changing and growing. So you're on this hike with your friend and you start saying to your friend and sharing like your worries and your concerns, like, I don't know what to do and I'm so frustrated and I'm so worried about him. And you have a friend who responds to you with, well, you just need to tell him, absolutely not. You can't do that. And you got to lay down the law. And, maybe you could put him in a timeout. Or, right, your friend starts telling you what you should do, what you need to do. And maybe, she's doing it in the way where her intention is to offer her sage advice. But if you think about how that feels for you, it feels like she's not really listening. And I don't really want I don't want her solutions. I want to be listened to. I want to be heard. And I want to try to have this conversation with my girlfriend so I can figure out the best solution for me and my child.
Mm.
right? Versus a different friend who's hiking with you and they respond to you more with compassion and curiosity. Like, wow, that sounds so difficult, Jeanine. That must be really tough going through that. Like, that makes sense that you'd be scared and then you'd be angry and you'd be worried about, is he ever going to get better? Is this behavior ever going to go away? Right? What are your thoughts about what to do?
Mm.
Right? Compassion and curiosity so that you're having a conversation
Hmm.
and not a lecture. And so that's really the golden nugget of how you get your kids talking, right? You can't come at them like guns blazing. What are you thinking? I've told you not to do that. Stop doing that, right? If it's the cord spinning or the video gaming in my situation, right? We got to slow it down and just try to take a lot of the tone and the judgment out of our words and really ask yourself, okay, wait, am I like having a conversation and really trying to understand what's going on for my child right now? Or am I more demanding, trying to like control them because I want them to stop, right? Lecturing. Because I think that the aha here is that the more you try to control them, typically, the less they want to change. So if you
Yeah.
want to have an impact, you want to start here with these types of strategies.
And okay. So now they're feeling safe to say something unusually vulnerable, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get
Yeah.
there? I mean, you prepared yourself and you start you open your opening salvo is don't worry kid, you're safe with me.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I really encourage my clients to do is to try to just state the facts, right? So in this situation that you brought up, it would be something like you're starting the conversation with just your observation. This is a DBT skill with, which is something like, I notice you're spinning the cord, right? Or, hey, I noticed you're struggling not getting your homework started. You're just like, no tone, no judgment, a calm conversation. And then you follow that with a curious question, like, what's going on there? What's happening? I don't have experience with autistic children, so I'm not sure if that directly works. If there's, from the
It does.
situation you brought
Yeah, I
up.
mean, it doesn't. Um, the kids will get the tone. The kids will get the feeling. The kids will get the body language. They'll
Hmm.
say, "Okay, she's interested in me.
Mm.
I'm safe. I don't need to
Hmm.
worry. I don't need to defend. I don't need to go into a meltdown." So
Hmm.
even if they don't understand the words themselves that come out, they
Hmm.
understand the rest of the like communication, which is the 90%, right? So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
understand almost as much as the kid who understands the words.
I love that. Yeah, so I think it's really then just keeping in mind, like, I really want to embody curiosity instead
Hmm.
of criticism. Right? Just like the example of the hike with the friend, right? You want to, if you're struggling with something, you want your friend to be compassionate and curious. You don't want them to tell you what you should do and need to do. And,
Hmm.
it feels like criticism then, like you're doing it
Hmm.
wrong. And that
Hmm.
shuts conversation down versus opening it up. We want to show that we understand. And it starts with getting curious, right? What's going on inside of them that's causing them to spin the cord,
Hmm.
causing them to avoid their homework?
Yeah, the one difference here is with the non-speaking child, you might not get the answer back that's going to give you the information you need to understand.
Mm, that's
You might not
challenging.
get, oh, I'm spinning this because it feels this way, or I see this, and you might not get that. But
Hmm.
I think you will get to the same, they will feel that you are curious and wanting to
Hmm.
understand.
Hmm. And, if you have a non-speaking child, that's probably not so different than my clients who have, boys tend to not be very verbose,
Hmm.
especially boys with ADHD or deeply feeling boys, highly sensitive boys. Um, Oftentimes either they don't tend to not want to talk about their emotions because it's overwhelming, or they just don't even know what they're feeling. So sometimes we might need to tiptoe in, and use our intuition as the parent and kind of, lead the conversation with, hey, it looks like you're really overwhelmed right now. Right. Or if it's the child spinning the cord, right? Like it seems like maybe something's making you anxious, or
Hmm.
right, something is scaring you, or
Or
you're maybe you're
overexcited or. And you know what? Worst case scenario, they still need to spin the cord because it's a great way for them to drown out everything else, and it's a great way for them to feel calm and composed, actually.
Mhm.
And so you just,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's go, and you and I, let's go and
Yeah.
lasso, you know. Let's
Yeah.
learn to do this maybe
Yeah.
constructively. How do you say
Exactly.
that one?
Yes. No, exactly. Right. It's like, hey, if you're overexcited or overstimulated, like spinning the cord is not an option because it's not safe, honey. But let's look at some other things that
Mm-hmm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's the
And
same
yeah.
principle.
Yeah, because what have you done? You've confirmed their identity, their agency, and now you've turned. If you do it, end up doing it with them, it turns. It just expanded their world of possibilities. I can do this repetitive self stimulation with
Mhm.
mom and turn it into, I don't know. I
Yeah.
may be romanticizing just a little bit. It might not turn out as rosy as it is, but I love the feelings of getting them to get the parent helping the child feel understood and
Yeah, because
respected.
I think if your listeners can at least just have the awareness that behavior usually starts with something your child's thinking in their mind or something that they're feeling. And
Hmm.
it's really that thought or that feeling that's causing the choice they're making, the behavior you're seeing on the outside. And so if you know that, oh, they spin the cord like that because they're feeling overexcited, all of a sudden it shifts the conversation from like, you're not a bad kid for spinning the cord and driving me nuts because I keep telling you not to do that. Right. But
Hmm.
it takes you to a place of more like understanding, like, oh, wait, that's right. They're just overexcited. And I just need to help them for safety reasons redirect that behavior to something that's safe that also feels calming for them when they're overexcited.
Yes.
Right. So I'm
Yes.
getting the sense that the same principle applies
Right?
because we're talking about the parent experience.
Yes.
I think the parent experience is very similar, whether you have a neurodivergent kid or a neurotypical kid.
Yes. The more we speak to experts, the more we realize that.
Hmm.
It was instinctively something we already believed, but it's comforting to, we feel vindicated very much. So, yeah.
Hmm. I love
Yeah, this is,
that.
and this is great because as a parent of a child with autism, sometimes you grieve the life you thought you were going to have. You had those
Hmm.
plans for your baby. You had those plans
Hmm.
for your life as a mom, as a proud
Hmm.
mom of a graduating kid and, taking a
Hmm.
kid to visiting colleges and the first
Hmm.
job and the partner and all that stuff. And you feel like you're going to be forever severed from that world and you're not going to see it again. And, your
Yeah.
friends are not going to understand you and your parents are not going to understand you and you're going to be isolated with this child that is
Mhm.
a reminder subconsciously of the things that you're missing. And often we've parents haven't completed that grieving process, and so we're in this And so it's one way for us to bring them into the normal world, bringing experts from
Mhm.
the normal world to them to see
Mhm.
your situation is actually quite similar
Mhm.
to the situation most parents are feeling. Some of it is feels worse, some of it is worse. There are
Mhm.
medical situations, there are
Mhm.
expenses that go through the roof in ways that normal parents will never understand.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of normalcy, and
Mhm.
maybe there's some, you can enjoy that. Is it, oh, this
Mhm.
is normal. I want it to be normal. This feels nice
Mm.
to be normal,
Mhm. Yeah, I
I
mean, I have
think.
to say, Kim, what you described, a lot of my clients feel as parents the same way because they know no different, right? They don't have an autistic child, but they're looking at their child and their child's choices are scaring them and their behavior is disappointing them and it's not what they thought it would be. And they thought parenting would be easier and they don't understand why their kid just doesn't listen to them and do what they say. Um, I think every parent wants their child to be the best version of themselves, whatever that is for them. And when you see that not happening, you get scared and you get worried. And like you said, there is a part of grieving because no one really prepped us for how challenging being a parent was going to be, right? With a neurotypical kid or a neurodivergent kid. Nobody did. And so it's almost like inevitable that we're going to be grieving the loss of that expectation of this rosy life and how fabulous it was going to be. And when you combine that with, we're missing a lot of strategies and skills to parent children. It's just a really frustrating position to be in as a mom or a dad.
So I'd like to end on a really nice, high, hopeful note.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like parents to finish this episode empowered, energized. Um, what is the one thing that you find yourself saying a lot to your clients that makes them feel energized and
Mm-hmm.
hopeful and happy?
Yeah. I think one thing that comes up again and again in conversations is trying to shift into the position of it's not me versus my kid. Because this isn't a tug of war here, but really looking at it as how can we be on the same team? How can we be on the same side? And to look at these challenges that our kids are going through or that our relationship with our child's going through and think about you and your child are a team together on this side of the bench and the problem, whatever that is on the other side of the bench. And how can we be a team and solve that together? And when you have that type of mindset, it really helps to foster the closeness and the connection you want. And it really helps to open up the door to help your child make better choices.
I love that. Thank you so much, Janine.
You're welcome. Thank you for this conversation. I hope it was helpful to your listeners.
Yes. I know that people are listening not necessarily because I've sent them information about you so that you could listen. So, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, the best place to start is my website, which is my name, JeanineMouchawar.com. JeanineMouchawar.com. And there are lots of free resources on my website. There's classes, there's podcasts like the one we're doing. I'll put this one and link it to my website as well. There's, if you prefer reading, there's blog posts. And then also I'm on most social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. But I would love to offer your listeners
Mm.
a guide just created last week, a parenting guide that are 5 questions to get teenagers talking. And I really think these questions will apply to your audience as well as, parents of kids who
Awesome.
are
Well, I'll make sure
neurotypicals.
that whether it's on YouTube or any show notes, there's going to be a
Okay.
link to that guide.
Amazing. Yeah, I think they'll love that. And I think ultimately we all want to feel close and connected to our children. And that starts with, getting that communication going.
That's right. Getting them talking, showing understanding,
Mm.
helping them
Help
help
them.
themselves. Right?
Yes, exactly. A plus
Perfect.
student.
Yes.
Way to
Let's
go,
quit while
Kim.
we're ahead. Um, Everybody listening, thank you and have a blessed week.
Thank you so much for having me.